This webinar today. This is being presented on behalf of the Stender School of Leadership, Business, and Professional Studies. This is a little different than what we've done for a lot of the presentations, in that we have an alumni of the College of St. Scholastica who's going to be presenting this, Benjamin Borchert. Hopefully I got the pronunciation right. I asked him just a minute ago. And he's going to be talking about how to deliver engaging meetings. And I think that all of us stand to learn something from this. I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say. We'll go through the presentation, some Q&A, and you can expect to receive a follow-up email with the recording of the presentation later. So with that, I will turn it over and let him take it away.
Eric, thank you. I'd like to first thank the Stender School, CSS, and Eric for this opportunity. I'm grateful to be here to share my knowledge after graduating from the College of St. Scholastica 14 years ago. I graduated in 2010 with a double major in English and Communication and a minor in theater. I was involved with 10 plays while I was there as actor, director, building stage sets, all sorts of stuff. I have many fond memories of Scholastica, and I'm glad I have this opportunity to connect and to give and to serve. My name is Benjamin Borchert. I have my own company that does this stuff. It's called Borchert, and I am completely devoted to virtual presentation skills. I mean, if you ask me, I will do presentation skills training in person as well. But the one that I'm really find satisfaction in is virtual presentation skills. I've been doing in-person and virtual since 2018. Let's explore some of the things that you can expect today and some of the things that we will explore together today. So first of all, I am a facilitator, which means I'm at my best when I think on my feet and when you join in the conversation. So if at any point in time you would like to unmute, turn on your camera, and ask me a question, or for clarification, have an observation that you would like to share, I want to hear that. I enjoy that part of the learning process as a conversation that we have. And adults typically learn best when they share of their own experiences, and everyone benefits when you share of your own experiences. So at any point in time, you would like to unmute and share, I would very much appreciate that. So we are going to explore three main topics today. To begin with, we're going to explore how you can set up your virtual space so that as soon as you turn your camera on, you will make a great first impression. And with that camera on, you will connect more effectively with your audiences. And through that great first impression and that connection, your message will be delivered more effectively to move your audience towards action, to absorb the information that you're trying to have them absorb, or to start thinking in a way that you would like them to start thinking. And so we'll look at that through a lens of the camera and through our virtual setups. From there, we'll explore delivery skills and how they are similar but unique compared to in person. So we'll explore how you use your entire body, your whole body, when you're communicating in the virtual space. And finally, we will discover when is the optimal time to turn that camera on. Many times we are in meetings or listening to this kind of presentation with our cameras off. When is it appropriate and optimal for us to turn our cameras on? And we'll explore that towards the end. So to begin with, this is a moment I'd like you to unmute if you feel comfortable with it, to turn your camera on if you feel comfortable with it. And I want you to look at the virtual setup that I have right here, this picture video that you see. And what do you notice that's working as you're looking at it? What do you notice about my virtual setup?
I would add too, if you want to put reflections into the chat, I'm keeping an eye on that as well, and we can mention that too.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.
As the speaker, I can see you well.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
Like you're not shadowed or kind of blending in with your background.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have some professional lights that I have here. And then the camera that I have has a shallow depth of field, is what it's called. I don't know if you really need to know that. But what it does is there's you can see that there's books back here, but those books are blurred. And so it focuses in on my face. Thank you. What else are you noticing? It's maybe a
I
little bit
noticed
different. Go ahead.
Yeah, notice that you have that shade closed behind you there. I have trouble with that backlighting myself, so that's something that jumps out at me right away.
Yeah. I I actually recently got it's contact paper and it's got bricks on it. I'm hoping to change this into like glitch in the matrix window back here. But I had the benefit of a very nice camera that I'm using. And so even with my hand in front of this, you can still see like my palm's lifeline or whatever it's called. So you can still see it very clearly with the sun coming in through there. Yeah. Let's do one more. What else do you notice?
Your background seems to be organized.
Yeah. Well, is anything about the background, the organization, what stands out specifically about that?
Well, one thing I notice is the color coding sort of to your right, my left on
Yeah.
the screen, but yeah.
Yeah. So that gives a good segue into what you should look for in developing a background. Well, this is a background in my office, but what do you look for to give yourself an effective background? And there are three key elements to giving yourself an effective background. The first one is have it say something about the tone and mood that you would like to bring to the conversation that you're having, the meeting, your personal branding. And so this here is to give it an element of design creativity. And so that is an intentional choice that I made to stack the books that way. My mother is a retired college librarian, and this is not how she would set up her books. Everything else is vaguely in the Library of Congress way. But that tells you that this is going to be kind of creative and fun when you're working with me. This is an espresso machine, so high energy and exciting. This is a metaphor that I use for pauses. I talk about how if you don't pause, it's like continuing to pour water into the mouths of your audience. And pauses give them an opportunity to drink in your information. So all of that stuff builds on the personal brand that I'm bringing to the table. The second piece is that anything in your background is free game to ask about. So any of the stuff that I have in my background, I would feel very comfortable asking me about. And there's probably some story that goes along with it. So again, the espresso machine, I started loving espresso when I spent some time in Italy and I got this espresso maker while I was there. And so I'd be happy to talk about that. And that's an important part of what my background is. And the third part, we discussed a little bit earlier about how there's a little bit of fuzz. It's not in focus behind me. And what that does is it brings the full attention to me and to my face. So if you're looking for a virtual background or you're using your own background, having it be where you come into the clearest focus of anything in the background. Right. So once you have the background set, once you have your space set for it, what we're looking for is a way that you can connect with your audiences so that you can be seen. You can be seen. And I had some trouble with this when the pandemic started about how we can translate the in-person into the virtual. And usually when someone's giving a presentation, they're standing up in front of an audience, whether it's in a theater, in a classroom, in a corporate training office, wherever it might be, you're standing up in front of that audience. But that does not translate into the virtual space. So a more connecting and engaging way to think about how you connect with your audience is I'm having coffee with you. And I mean that as you specifically. Yes, there is several people on this phone call, but I'm still only having a one-on-one conversation with each one of you rather than necessarily speaking to the entire group. And so it's in that conversational style, as if we're sitting across the table having a coffee with one another, that we can develop the elements of how you can be seen in your virtual meetings. So SEEN, S-E-E-N, is an acronym. And the first one is to sit up straight. And that's, of course, for you specifically, but it's also for your laptop. Oops. Let's see. There we go. So you can see that I have a laptop down here. And this laptop is sitting facing down. And this is kind of the classic, we would make fun of a person behind, if they were, or we'd at least be uncomfortable with a person who only their head is showing here. So you already know that. But what you do first is to sit the laptop up. And so it's parallel. So see how this is 90-degree angle facing us. And one of the biggest reasons that we do that is because we're trying to create a virtual world that is an extension of the physical world. Let me show you over here. So if I'm looking straight on here and I turn my chair and I enter into the real world, the lines are similar. The way that I'm situated is similar. And so if I look one way and back here, my brain doesn't have to do any rearranging. There doesn't have to be, I have to sit myself up or you have to sit me up in order for you to see and understand where I am. So here, it's sitting up. But right now, all you can see is my hands. And so that brings us to the next part of SEEN. So S, sit up straight for your laptop. E is eye level camera. Now, this is a lot higher than what we typically expect it to be. When I'm working with clients, it has to be book after book after book before we get it up to a point where it feels like we're across the table from one another and that we're living in the same world, in the same physical world as one another. And so rather than stacking all the books on top of it, I have an espresso box that I'll show you with. This is the box. And we're going to set the computer up on top of that. So now, as you can see, I am more in alignment here. And you can see me, and it seems like on the other side of this laptop is a Benjamin who's looking back at me through the mirror, through the glass of the screen. So the world on the other side of the laptop is the same as the world on this side of the laptop. And that's what you're trying to create. That reduces cognitive load and eases the amount of energy and effort that it takes for a person to connect with you, understand you, and see you as that confident, poised expert that you are. So we have it set up where it's up at eye level. We have it set up where the laptop is sitting up straight. From here, we have setting your framing the same way that they do for an 11th grade yearbook photo. So you know the senior year yearbook photos where you're standing in front of Lake Superior and maybe the sun is setting behind you or in the golden hour, or you're somewhere else out on a hike in the woods, and whatever it might be. There's these special ways that we do our senior photos. This is maybe you remember in high school, maybe you have kids that are at that age. This setup should be the junior year photo, your 11th grade yearbook photo. And what that means is that we're centered from side to side. There's a little bit of space above our heads, and there is some space underneath our arms for movement. So you can see it's right under my armpits. And ultimately what this does is it prevents you from being a virtual close talker. The old Seinfeld episode, a close talker. We have our proximity distance where we're most comfortable. And when it comes to business specifically, the proximity that we feel comfortable with another person is just past the distance of our fingertips. So this is me and my bubble, and you are past it. And so when you frame yourself with a little space above, a little space below, you put yourself at a distance that your audience is comfortable with, being here with them in this way. We have our framing right. We have our cameras at eye level. We have our cameras so they're at a 90-degree angle. And the final piece of being seen is N, which is narrow your gestures. Narrow your gestures. When I'm doing in-person, or when I did in-person presentation skills courses, I would tell people to give bigger gestures and to hold them for longer. But in this case, I'm giving that big gesture, I'm holding it longer, but it's not being effective because you can't see my hand. And in Western business culture, we like to see the palms of the hands and the thumbs. There are researchers who specifically look at this, palms of hands and the thumbs. And the way that that can be seen is to narrow your gestures to get them into frame. Now, if they're below frame, you're already getting a little bit more communication because you're in that 11th grade yearbook photo. So me moving my arms, it shows the upper shoulder and neck kind of gesturing that comes with it. But getting your hands up, especially with your palms facing this way, no pointing. This helps your audience understand your message more effectively. So for your virtual presentations and your meetings, set yourself up so you can be seen by your colleagues, by your audiences, and by anyone who is on these virtual meetings with you. So remember to sit up, especially your laptop, eye level camera, 11th grade yearbook photo, and to narrow your gestures. At this point, I'd like to open the floor for discussion to see if there's anything that I can clarify, any questions that came up so far, any observations in your own lives that you'd like to share. Okay. As a virtual facilitator, there is a little counting trick that I use as I'm waiting for people to answer the question. And so I've been using that today. And that is, in the virtual space, a person needs to make sure they heard the question right. They need to find their unmute button. They need to double check that they really want to say that thing, and then they want to unmute themselves. And I found that the golden zone for that to happen, to invite as many interactions as possible. So whether you're teaching a course, whether you're asking for feedback from your teams or groups or committees, to wait 8 to 12 seconds allows that thinking process and gives your audiences that time to reflect. And so I've been giving 12 seconds, and so here we are. So next, we are going to explore how you can be engaging when you're delivering your presentations to your audiences by speaking with your whole body. And at a high level, so we're thinking about this, first we'll think about it at a high level, and then we'll get into more of the tactics and the tools that you use to achieve this. So the general idea is that you gesture and you deliver your presentations as if your audience has zero knowledge and infinite intelligence. Zero knowledge and infinite intelligence. Just in general, this is a good way to interact with people, to give them the benefit of the doubt. But in terms of communication, if you know that they are intelligent, you are going to do everything you can to get your message across. You're going to use your entire body in order to connect and deliver that message. Whenever I talk about this area of the training that I do, the programs that I run, I think back to when I had spent some time in Florence, Italy, and how I only knew, I don't know, maybe 120 words in Italian. And I still, with gusto, would try to communicate with anybody I could. And most of it took place with these big gestures where I would try and will myself to be understood by the person that I was talking to. And with that, my gestures became unleashed, and they did everything they could to help me help them understand what I was trying to say. And so without knowing it, I was assuming they had zero knowledge of English, although most people had some English there, and infinite intelligence. So it was just a matter of time before they would understand what I was talking about. So I found that process, thinking of your audience as people who want to understand, who want to learn, who want to connect, and then let your body help you to connect with them. Well, along the same lines, this is more specifically for the meetings that you're running. So a lot of this goes towards giving a presentation. So much like what I'm doing here, I'm speaking to you and delivering a message to you. But oftentimes when we're in virtual space, whether it's Zoom or Teams or WebEx, we are part of a collaborative group. And so I might be speaking for a couple minutes, and then it might be Joanne who speaks for a couple minutes, Tiffany speaks for a couple minutes, Darcy speaks for a couple minutes, and we each pass the baton, pass the conch, if you will, between each other. And so we are not just speakers when we're in this space, but we are also listeners. So in the cases where you have the comfort, when you are camera ready, and you have the bandwidth requirements so that everyone can have their camera on, it's important for engagement within your group and team to listen with your entire body as well. To listen with your entire body. And when you do this, and when you do this well, it also reduces Zoom fatigue. Zoom fatigue is a process where we feel exhausted when we're in this virtual space. But there was a study about a year ago that said if you use gestures of understanding, then you will, for yourself, reduce the amount of Zoom fatigue that you have. And everybody in the meeting will be more engaged with the content and remember the content more effectively when you do these. So what am I talking about in terms of listening with your whole body? There are some big gestures here. I had my very special model giving you some examples of what these might be. And so as we walk through these, from top left down to going down each column, we have, yes, I wholeheartedly agree with you. No, I don't agree with that. I'm kind of on the fence about it. Next is, I have a question. I'm feeling confused, and I am not in agreement at all with what you're talking about. And the final column is empathetic. So I feel for you, your hand over your heart. I have also experienced that thing you're talking about, as the kind of meek hand raise. And finally, there's a hugging where you have your hands clasped together. And these are just the start. These are just the start. What ultimately you want to do is, just like when we spoke with our whole body, when we listen with our whole body, we want to will the people who are with to feel that we understand. So that might be nodding a little more vigorously than you would otherwise. It might be smiling a little bit bigger. It might even be, rather than having a neutral face, you know, might even disagree a little bit more. This is interesting. I just led a book club with Hidden Potential. It's an Adam Grant book. And in it, he talks about the different ways that we key into others to show them whether we're interested or not in a conversation. And if we have one-on-one conversations with people, to have more of a blank face and unresponsiveness to it, unconsciously shows the other person that we aren't interested in the conversation anymore. Let me give a redaction there. I did do a book club on hidden potential with Adam Grant. The book I'm referring to is Super Communicator by Charles Duhigg. He's the guy who wrote The Power of Habits. So be exuberant with your listening face and your listening body. All right, we'll go back to that one in just a second. Is there any other questions or comments or places for more clarification? Okay. Eric, I'm going to go into a little bit more content than I had anticipated. I usually have more comments and questions, but I'm going to assume comments and questions and give a little bit more information that way. So
Sounds great.
thanks. So Benjamin, that's me. Benjamin, you showed us how we can set up our virtual space so that we can connect better and like have that coffee with people. We know that we should speak with our whole bodies and listen with our whole bodies, but you didn't really say anything about where we should look and how we should sound. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I would be happy to. So let's start about where we should look and how we can make connection through eye contact. So just like in person, eye contact is a valuable way that you can stay connected with your audiences. We can feel that connection even if you aren't across the world from one another. Eye contact. So how do you get eye contact with people? Where do you look in order for people to feel like they are connected with you? So the obvious place is you look at them. That's what we do in real life. So I look down at the screen and I can see the little boxes and I'm looking at people, and that is eye contact. It does not read that way. Eye contact is looking straight into the dark abyss of the camera lens. And through that placement, your audience will feel a deeper connection with you. And it's through that connection that your message is more likely to be received by your audiences. Now, Benjamin, should you be looking at the lens of the camera constantly? Well, it depends. I try to do as much of it as possible because most of the time in the workshops that I lead, I'm going to be asking people to be giving mini presentations, and then I am going to critique them. I'm going to give them feedback. They will receive feedback from a professional presentation coach. And so these two things, giving a presentation in front of your peers and colleagues, and then receiving feedback from it, these can be nerve-invoking things. And so when you add eye contact, and the more eye contact you add, the more trust you build, the deeper connection you build with the people that you're speaking to. So I'm trying to pump up the trust with people so that they feel the connection and know that they can be open to change and open to trying something new. Most people aren't in that situation. And so in a typical place, whether I'm working with engineers or accountants or educators, leadership, government, whatever it might be, each group of people typically has a few different things that they're looking at. And so you might have your slide deck. You have everybody who's on the screen, all the little boxes, so you can see reactions if there are reactions. And then you have your notes. And so when you have all of those things, how often or how should you look at the camera? The way that I look at that is to imagine that you and I are going to a bar and grill together. And it's very busy, very popular. The only spots available are at the bar. And so you and I sit together, sitting at the bar in front of us. And there's a game on, and there is a bartender walking across. It's one of those places where you can see all the way across to the other side. So there's lots of stuff to look at. And so here we are, and we're talking, and I'm looking at these different things in front of me. But then, especially for important stuff, I'll lean into you and I'll make eye contact here. And then I'll go back to looking at the other things and paying attention to the other things. But I make sure that I'm always checking in with you. So when you do that, you may go from your PowerPoint slides to your notes and then back to here. And when you come to here, it's important to pause. It typically is between 3 and 5 seconds that you want to hold this, because you are trying to use that eye contact to make connection. And it's somewhere in that 3 to 5 second range that we feel the connection with another person through eye contact. So you can look away, and you should look away, because your message is also important. But coming back and connecting with them, it's that connection that helps bridge the humanity between us so that you can receive the message that I'm sending. The next piece of delivery that is really important for anybody I work with, this might be people who are in a bridge program where they're doing an internship at a company, but they're still in college. So they have a semester with the company. I've trained people there, all the way up to people in the National Speakers Association who I have coached and helped. This one thing will make you more credible, more of that poised expert that you are. And it all boils down to 3 words. Pauses are powerful. Nearly everyone, there are a few rare exceptions, but nearly everyone, as a speaker, could stand to use a few more pauses and a little bit longer pauses. There's a few ways that you should think about using the pauses. One is the way you just heard. After you've dropped a truth bomb, as it were, or a powerful statistic, or your key message, pause. The second piece I alluded to earlier with this picture right here. So imagine that you have a pitcher full of water and you are pouring it into your audience's mouth with their head tilted up. And when you pour, it just pours into their mouth. When you don't pause, it's like pouring without giving them a chance to drink in your message. So giving occasional times for them to stop and understand and allow their minds to process the information that you are delivering to them. And the final way that you can start practicing with pauses is to use it to eliminate disfluencies. That is the scientific word for ums and ahs, so's and knows, all these kind of words that we use to fill in the silences. Silences as a speaker are very hard in our bodies to deal with. But you're a speaker and you're the one who's leading this. And so it's best if you can leave those pauses, because that will show you to be the expert who is not at all worried about being interrupted. Or you see, we use disfluencies, we use ahs and ums when we're having day-to-day conversations with people. The is a way to signal to your conversation mate that you're not quite done talking, that you have a little bit more to say. And when you're having that conversation in small groups or one-on-one, that's an important signal to the other people who are listening to you. That is unnecessary and unhelpful and ineffective when you're doing that as a speaker. So as much as you can, release the disfluencies, the ahs and the ums, and replace them with pauses. So I challenge you to try this over the next week or so here. Try to take any 2-minute segment that you're talking with somebody and try to eliminate all the ahs and ums within that space. It'll be a little clunky at first, but with some practice, you will begin to develop a habit that can serve you when you're in a position of the leader and expert and the speaker when you enter that place. Pauses are powerful. Eye contact at the camera. So a few more ways that you can enhance the engagement of your delivery when giving a virtual presentation. I'll give us another 12 seconds here. Are there any places of question or clarification that I can give to you? All right. So now I've put a lot of emphasis on how you show up with your camera on and how you connect with your audience in a virtual space. But you use PowerPoint as well. And when I say PowerPoint, I don't just mean PowerPoint for engineers. It might be a CAD drawing for excuse me, for financial services professionals. It might be spreadsheets for analysts. It might be charts and graphs. So whatever that might be specifically for your profession, that's what it is. But ultimately, usually it's PowerPoint. So how do you know when you should push the PowerPoint up and when you should go without? So if you're just trying this out, going back and forth between your face and PowerPoint, because you've accepted that role as the poised leader, and that you know in order to make true human connection in the virtual space, you know that it's important to have your camera on so you can be seen. But you also want to get that information up because that's the message that you as the messenger are trying to get across. So if you're starting out, this is where I would turn the cameras on and keep the PowerPoint off. So I want you to pretend that you're making a presentation sandwich. You are making a presentation sandwich. And your face is the bread. So in communication theory, this is called primacy recency. People remember what happens at the beginning and what happens at the end. And you may have the most stellar PowerPoint presentation. You might have some really roaring stats and some great information to give, but it's still you giving it. So putting yourself at the beginning and the end creates a trustworthy and credible channel by which that information that's so important gets delivered. And so turning it on right away at the beginning, turning on your camera and keeping the PowerPoint off, and then all the way to the end, when you're finishing up and giving your wrap up, turning the camera on and turning your PowerPoint off. And for one bonus thing, if you're ever having a discussion, pull down the PowerPoint for the discussion. There might be one other place that when I've coached people that there's a blockage for going on and off the PowerPoint. And in Zoom, at least, there's 3 or 4 clicks that you need to go through in order to get your PowerPoint on and off. And that's a lot of scrolling around on your screen, trying to find exactly where you need to go. And I want to extol the benefits of the keyboard shortcuts. So these are a few for each one of them. This is a screen share, turn on screen share and turn off screen share. So for where we are now, for Zoom, it's Alt S. For WebEx, it's Control Alt D, and for Teams, it's Control Shift E. And each one of those, if you're a Mac user, has Mac equivalents for it. But ultimately, if you want, you can go to the websites and look at their documentation, or you can just Google other keyboard shortcuts. So I'm going to do that right now, or hop into a keyboard shortcut so that it pops up, Alt S pops up the screen. And then I'm going to share the final PowerPoint slide, which is, let's connect. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can look for this face right here. It's at Ben Borchert. I encourage you, if any questions, feel free to email me. Or if you need any, your teams, individuals, organizations, you need any training for virtual presentation skills, I'm here. And that's my personal number. So feel free to send me a text or give me a phone call. I am of the cusp of the generation where I still do enjoy taking phone calls. Again, Alt S pops me right back out of it. And with that, I'd like to open the floor for discussion and hand it back over to Eric. So are there any questions, places for clarification? What did you think?
Well, I will share, and I said this before you even got started. I anticipated that I'd learn some things, and I certainly have. If anyone else wants to share any questions, reflection, again, feel free to go off of mute or pop that into the chat.
I have to confess that "so" is one of my go-to words with the pauses. And it's hard for me to stop that because I feel like I'm still making connections and I'm continuing the conversation. But I can certainly see where overuse can be annoying.
Yeah, I didn't hear any of the disfluencies while you're speaking there. As you bring your awareness to it, they tend to go down. And I want to reiterate that it's Jane, it's very specific when these are helpful or not. And so you can and should keep using them in your day-to-day conversations with people. It's just when you enter into the role of the speaker, which ultimately means that you're the leader, and that using words like "so," things like this, it subtly and unconsciously can diminish some of the authority that you have in this situation. It's tough. I have my thoughts. If I'm not being conscious of it, they sneak in for me too.
I usually have a Post-it note on my laptop with the words so that I am aware of it, but it doesn't always work.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, one of the benefits, Jane, of being in the virtual space is you can't see any of this behind the screen. Your audiences can't see any of that. I have set it up where I've literally put my notes on big sticky paper above here. And so I can walk through a presentation based on sticky notes above. So that's a great idea. Sometimes I'll have listen on there. Sometimes I put smile on there. So I appreciate the little notes to yourself for presentations.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next question. All right, Eric, that might be the mood of the group. That might be
And
what we
that
have.
is just fine.
Yeah,
I think that you gave a lot of content and some practical takeaways there. So thank you again for doing that. And to the folks that were here, we will get the recording out. Watch for a follow-up email. And be sure to take a look at our webinar list. We've got some other presentations coming up. I think the next one will be sometime in April. So I really want to thank you again for presenting this, Ben, and look forward to connecting with you more in the future.
likewise,
Some
Eric.
feedback in the chat there.
Yeah, Angie, thank you.
All right.
Bye.
All right, take care.